You said that the planning board accepts credentials of the engineer at the beginning of each formal application and public hearing. But the fact is that those credentials are accepted for drawing up and presentation of plans. And if you will do the research, maybe you should ask for the ordinance concerning the environmental impact statement. You will find that a certified environmental engineer is required to do the research work that describes things like rare and endangered species habitat, flora and fauna, the actual physical things like that. And I would like you to then, and I'm requesting that you then, after you've read it yourself, correct that so that that young man understands.
I think, Mrs. Smith, the only point we were making was that it couldn't be anyone. It was a matter that would have to be heard by the planning and or zoning board. And at the right time, if that professional was going to submit the report, it would not be accepted, for example, on the checklist, which was the answer someone from this side of the aisle had given. They would know, for example, that the person didn't meet the right level of ordinances through that check and balance process.
You were accurate, except that it really wasn't the answer to what, because he asked me the question beforehand. And I told him he should research the ordinance, that there were certain requirements, and those are the requirements. Because a person quite often does the research and submits the EIS, and that's the only thing they have to do with an application. So I think it would be a good idea if that were corrected for that young man. Gentleman, excuse me if you don't like that term. Another thing that has bothered me, and I don't mean to insult anybody, is all the discussion about whether or not grants were applied for Harms Pinnacle. I've heard many times you insist that they were. And in actuality, and I know this because I was part of a committee compiled from different boards, commissions, and the then manager and professionals, that the Planning Incentive Grant, PIG or PIG, even though the township was accepted as a community with the privilege of having these grants, each application has to be, area has to be specified before you've applied. And I would like to know if that was done, and if not, then the township didn't apply for grants.
I'll try and give you the summation again. The answer is you can't apply for a grant for property you don't own. And we did not own the property at the time.
Oh, excuse me.
Right,
That's, maybe I'm wrong, but
Mrs. Smith,
planning incentive grants, before you even start, you have to have an application for the area.
Why don't you let me finish, and I'll give you the whole response.
But you've skipped over the important part. Did we?
You might not know, because I might be getting there.
Okay.
Fair enough?
Always okay. Fair enough, because our patterns of speech are not all the same. And I myself am guilty of giving background before I give an answer. So, yes, please.
So the explanation is you need to define the properties and subdivide them. We have not yet gotten to the stage where we have subdivided or determined how we're going to use the property. So as a result of that, while we are PIG eligible, and we are PIG approved, we have to subdivide the Harms property first in a plan. Once the property has been subdivided, we will then file with PIG for that particular parcel to be included in our overall PIG program. The only way we could have done that already was if we filed for the entire piece of property in its totality to be included, which would have been unwise to do absent first deciding what we're going to do with the property. So the right order of events was to acquire the property, subdivide it, and determine its best use within how we need to use that particular piece of land, and then submit for our PIG funding, of which we are already approved. So there is a process that we have to go through. And I don't want to belabor it. I mean, that's the explanation. We've talked about it several times. It's not an issue we're going to debate here tonight, but that's basically the
I don't
explanation.
intend to debate it, because I fully understand that. I understood that before. My concern is you kept saying we did apply. Are you now saying we didn't really apply?
No, what I've said was we didn't have to apply, Mrs. Smith, because we are already PIG approved. You don't apply for something that you're already approved for.
You weren't approved for Harms Pinnacle area.
It doesn't work that way,
Yes, it
Mrs.
does.
Smith. Okay, well, like I said, we're not going to debate it. You're entitled to your opinion. We respect your comments, and we respect your opinion.
I think that it's evasive answers. I don't think it gets the real, I mean.
Mrs. Smith, I've given you my explanation.
The public has a right to have straightforward facts. And I feel that some of those are not. And I have some other things, but I'm not going to do it all at once. But as I often say, something new has come up, and I'm not going to talk about what I intended to. So I'm making a list, and you'll get it a little at a time. And it might be 3 months after a comment's made, but
Thank you, Mrs. Smith. Mr. Dunshee, do you want to wait? I see your name on here. I'm going to reserve your time. In the event Mr. Chernetsky gives his report and you have any comments, we'll absolutely welcome your remarks at that time. Mrs. Dixell, there she is. Welcome, Mrs. Dixell. Come on up. That's it.
Just so that you know.
You've only got Mr. Curry. Hello, Mrs. Dixell. Come on up. Welcome.
I just want to give this to, I have to give this to Mr. Gannon.
Sure. Mrs. Dixell, it says you'd like to talk about the Board of Education, Adelphia, and a sign, a stop sign of some sort.
Whole bunch of things. Which one am I using?
Either one. Hey,
Okay. Barbara Dixell, The Villages. Okay, several things. First of all, Dr. Schiff is leaving the Board of Ed. He's been wonderful. He's been a wonderful educator. He was great on No Child Left Behind. He's been wonderful on helping to get scores up, Terra Nova, GEPA, all this stuff. He's going to be a superintendent of a school district in Reddington, Pennsylvania. Great loss for us, wonderful for them. Just wanted to make you aware of that. I did go to the Board of Ed the other night. The last time I was here, I did question the $250,000 matching grant. Okay, so, Mr. DeBella, you told me to go to the Board of Ed. I did.
good.
And I asked them if it's true, that about the Board of Ed. Someone told me that the Board of Ed was told they didn't have to give to the grant, that that the grant would be in the township budget and they weren't have to give any money. So they said, yeah, it was true. And I said, well, let me tell you something. Dr. Golden wasn't there, I'm sorry to say, but it still bothers me about this grant because I pointed to Dr. Schiff, Mr. Wooters, Mr. Massa, and whoever else was there that was salaried. And I said, we pay your salary, we pay your salary, and we pay your salary. And we buy every book, pad, pencil, and eraser in this town. Our property taxes pay for a whole bunch of things. So I am very upset that our administrator, any administrator of a school district in our town, even though they say they're autonomous and they don't have to listen, these are our kids, they're educating our kids, they have to be a lot more responsible and caring than they are, okay? You can't just sit there and tell me you're autonomous, because, honey, we pay your salary, we don't have to pay your salary, we can pay somebody else's salary. Anyway, I said, I find it very distressing that I have to read in the newspaper that the superintendent of schools made a comment that was printed in the newspaper. that said, well, we're not obligated to give you anything at all. Maybe we'll give you $50,000 over 5 years. I said, listen, everybody, and listen up real good. I want to see you give Howell Township $10,000 a year for the next 10 years on this grant. I think $5,000 is an insult. I really do. Our property taxes pay your budget. And our property taxes keep going up. I want to see $10,000 for that police matching grant. And I'm very distressed that any body of the Board of Ed would have the audacity to say that. So that's where I stand
Good.
on that.
Well, we appreciate that.
Okay. You told me when I said that?
No.
Go to the Board of Ed? I did.
We're glad you did, and we appreciate you filling us in.
Okay. Okay, the villages, just so that you know, I did deliver to Mr. Chernetsky the newspaper section called Plus 50, of which, good news for Howell. Seymour Sorkin, who of the villages, who is very talented in wood carvings and has the most unbelievable collection of birds, animals, and anything else he has hand-carved and done over many years, has entered a contest, and he was given the first place blue ribbon prize. And he carved a ball-headed American eagle, which right now is in, because Jerry and I took a trip and drove down to the Monmouth County Museum on Ryan Sims Road to see it. It's in a glass cage, and it will be judged along with other things for the grand prize.
That's terrific.
Good news for Howell.
That's great.
One of our senior citizens hand-carved this beautiful little eagle. It's 9 inches. It's nothing spectacular size, but it's beautiful. It was hand-done. It's gorgeous, and great news for Howell.
That's terrific. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Anyway, and I said to Mr. Chernetsky, you know, you need to honor him, so a letter was sent.
Yeah, we'll coordinate and talk about what else we can do.
Because
That's great.
that was very good. That senior citizen of Howell won first prize. Okay. Okay, and a year or two ago, if you remember, I did come to the council with the historic preservation papers that I had said, and I gave it to you, requesting that Adelphia be declared historic.
Mm-hmm.
Anything ever happened with that, and we fell flat on our face?
No, I think it was given to the planning board.
Well,
I know
then
that
they
it was
fell flat on their face.
No, I don't know that that's a completely dead issue, because through the master plan process, there will be a discussion around the Adelphia section and what the requirements.
That was supposed to have been done a while ago. Because the only reason why I'm asking is because we're getting a lot of new people in Howell Township. Adelphia is an old section of Howell. Mm-hmm. Some of those are 200-year houses, and new people are moving in, and they're renovating these houses. One of which, I think is a very old house on Wyckoff Mills. It's getting siding put on it. Bonkers, you know. Okay, please, somebody declare that section.
Would you please make sure that
put
if
the
it
eagles
isn't,
up like they have in Brooklyn. You can't paint it. You can't put a nail in the wall. You can't do anything without calling God.
well, we want to make sure that we do it in the appropriate balance to protect property
But
rights
this was
of the owners,
years
and
ago.
it's got to be
came
looked
to
at
you
the right way.
guys. I'm begging you guys. You've got 200-year-old houses in that section.
Mr. Chernetsky, could you just make sure that through the master plan process, it was kicked around a few times, that we have a dialogue around that, the historic requirements and all the different provisions that go along with it? Thank you, Mrs.
There
Dixon.
are some, if you go back some time, there was a lot of discussion in respect to that area of Adelphia, and I think, Bill, you recall that there were some issues there, but there are some long and lengthy notes in that area. Mrs. Smith, you may recall that area also.
We'll make sure we
but
look
you've
at it
got
during the master plan
cemetery,
process.
you know, and by the way, the Bethesda Methodist Cemetery sign is down. It's been down for a while. I have no idea why. Maybe somebody could find out, because that was very, very historic.
Can we
part of Howell.
check into that, maybe, Mr. Chernetsky and Mr. Nunziato?
Another thing I want to bring up, okay, I know you guys have been doing road repair all over town, speed bump signs, in and out. Okay, I know, I'm going to ask you again. Since 1997, all we have been asking for is 2 stop signs, and to make Wyckoff Road 1 speed limit, 35 miles an hour, all the way down. It's 35 miles an hour to the villages. It's 45 miles an hour from the cemetery to County Road Line 524. Why? We keep asking.
You want it all at 45?
No, don't. We wanted a 35.
Mr. Nunziata, do you have any of the history on this? I know it's been talked about, and I know the police have looked at it. I don't know what the resolution has been.
I mean, it's pretty much the status quo. I mean, there has been no, as far as the warrants and the criteria used for the speed limits, I mean, the villages, the Wyckoff part she's referring to, 35, is 35 because of the development.
Okay.
The 45 areas, again, are the longer, more open areas that are not developed and may be zoned so that they would not be residential, maybe an SED or some other type of zoning, which wouldn't predicate a lesser speed limit.
Can we at least, though, Mr. Chernetsky, through your office, just see if we can pull the file and find out if there is something that can be done to change the speed limit? And these two stop signs, I can't believe we can't get these stop signs up.
Again, it's a local road. I have been to Joator. I am not going back to the DOT because I said the last time I went there, I got ambushed, man.
This is for the stop signs?
The stop signs.
Okay.
Stop signs where?
Okay, we have been, since 1997, we have been wanting one by the village's entrance.
Okay.
You can't get in, you can't get out. And we want one, again, we wanted something, I guess, by the Exxon station or whatever. We need a stop sign. We need something. We can't
Okay.
get out of the villages.
Can't
Can't get into the villages
Mr.
either.
Chernetsky, can we coordinate with your office and engineering about getting
Something.
these
Where
stop
would you want a
signs?
stop sign? I need a
Yeah,
little
I'm
help
still-
there.
She's saying by when you're leaving the villages.
In other words, in the village's corner
Right.
when you're making that turn, okay, at the
On the
villages.
Strickland? Right there by the Exxon gas station?
They wanted one, we wanted one there years ago, and we wanted one at the entrance. In other words, coming off 9 and Casino. They still come fly, I mean, at a much lesser speed, but they still come flying down past the village's entrance. So we
You've
still.
really had a problem getting into the villages?
Yeah, we do. We do. We do.
Well, why don't we figure out what the traffic
The
department there?
traffic also, if you do another traffic study,
big.
from 3, will you please vouch for that, Mr. Walsh? Because
I travel that road all the time in the morning 'cause my building's
3
there.
o'clock in the afternoon till past the rush hour, there is no physical way to get up or down Wyckoff Mills Road.
I stop in the post office all the time. That's my P.O. box. And in the morning, sometimes cars be backed up 20, 30.
But what's that got to do with a stop
Not that
sign?
way.
They're already backed
I don't
up.
understand the stop
We
sign.
What's
wanted
the
a
point of
stop
stop-
sign in front of the villages. We've wanted one for years.
You want one at the villages, which is a different issue than the traffic being backed up.
Okay, but also, like I say, anyway.
That's my point,
The one
though.
last thing I want to bring up is, no, two things.
Another night.
Okay. I know I did ask you that one time to put back Governor Howell's picture on the wall. Thank you for doing that, but I would appreciate it if some of these inspiration pictures can go back to the history that used to be on these walls. Howell is rural. We're not from North. We are Mayberry. I don't care if anybody likes that. We are Mayberry. We're rural. We'd like to stay a little bit rural, but can some of the history be put back? And can some of the history that came out of that glass cage out there and some of the old, some of that
Well,
stuff
the
be
glass
put
cage
back?
is the clerk and the manager's office. They rotate putting things in that
Well,
glass
right
cage.
now it's empty. It's
So
been-
I would have to defer to the clerk and the manager about, they put in fire safety month, they put in things from the schools. I'm not certain, Mr. Davis, if you can give an update on what you're doing with the glass cabinet.
There's nothing scheduled at the moment for it.
Well, a
and,
lot of history came out of it.
Well, the glass cage had been, there was information there about the Fire Safety Bureau for
Yeah,
about
we
2
have from
years.
time to time, like Fire Prevention Week, the fire.
Yeah, it rotates what goes in there.
We rotate it.
And the other thing I'm just going to do is I'm going to give you a set of pictures that I took. I went out here one day in the sun with my camera, looking up, taking pictures of the whole facade of this building. There's a lot of repair that's needed. I personally, it's my opinion, I'm going to tell you my opinion, I don't think we need a new town hall for God knows how many millions of dollars it's going to cost us. What we need to do is repair this building. This building is decaying up there, the walls outside are decaying, there's holes out there, there's stuff that needs. I
So
don't want-
what fundraising are you going to do for us?
Well, you know what, you got building repair money in the budget. Find
Mrs.
some
Dixell,
and repair this building. I tell you, I really think you maybe need a new engineering building. I can agree with that. Work on
So
those
that you
floors.
know, this municipal budget includes a capital expense to do the architectural study for whether or not this building is going to be rehabbed or what the other alternatives are. The manager has told each of us individually he's gearing up, once the budget was completed, to determining the right step to evaluate all of our physical plant needs, because you're
Since
correct.
this building is
Something
so
has to be done.
historic,
We don't disagree with you. Something has to be done. We just have to make sure we have a plan
To
and we
clean it up.
determine
and-
what has
and
to happen.
This building is so historic, and
We
it
agree.
was given to us or whatever. I would hate like hell to have to see us go into a brand-new steel, God knows what, someplace. I'm going to give you these
Thank you,
pictures. I have a
Mr.
second set at home. They take a look at some of the decay up there and around here before it falls on someone's head.
We don't disagree. Okay.
Thank you all
Thanks,
very
Mrs.
much.
Dixell. Mrs. Wisner, welcome. Come on up.
That's not my stomach. I would love to see some of the old stuff. You ever go to Carlisle 33? See some of the old stuff?
Good evening, Mrs. Wisner. Welcome. You know the
Hi,
routine,
Ilse
please.
Wisner, Howell, New Jersey. I have a question. I don't think a day goes by that I don't have several people asking me what the status is with AST. And I know we've been playing telephone tag and haven't been able to connect.
God just struck at you for actually mentioning those initials, I guess.
You got to strike someone. And so anyway, I would like
Yeah.
some sort of a status report.
I saw it on here. I think I've got to ask either Mr. Chernetsky or
Yeah,
Mr. Gannon what we are at liberty to talk about with respect to AST, and I'll certainly have a sidebar conversation, Ms. Wisner, but
That's probably better.
what are we able to comment on publicly at this time?
Well, as you're aware, we did have special counsel meet with us in the litigation mode, so we're really not much at liberty to discuss anything with regard to the, I guess, the challenge that we're involved in with the COA site and everything else.
Okay, this just continues to smack of closed meetings. I mean, there are people that seem to know what is going on, but the residents and the town have absolutely no idea. I think it's very, very unfair and improper that
Here's
we aren't aware of what's going on and
here's
have
a
no
reason-
say in what's
Let-
going
let
on.
me just
Here's
say
what I can
this.
tell you. We, Councilman Walsh and I were designated by the majority of the council. He and I have participated together with Township Attorney and Planner in 2 meetings in Trenton with representatives from AST and their attorney. And as the councilman can speak for himself, but he'll tell you, one of the provisions of that is the COA process requires confidentiality on the discussions, and we are all, and correct me if I'm wrong, at the front end of this, obligated not to comment on it until it's completed. We are as frustrated as you are, a part of that process, and it isn't done because we
And-
want it to be done. We all
And
have
I'll
to,
respect the fact that you,
That's the issue.
again, the residents have no right to know what's going on in their town, and you're not at liberty to speak about it. However, then I would like to ask, is the master plan being adhered to? Can you comment on that? And also, you were very strong about the MOU, that it would be there to protect the residents and the town. And so then my question is it effective? Has it proven to do that or not?
It was all
yeah,
dangerous.
I
don't know.
I don't think
We
we
can't
can.
really talk about it.
I think if we were to comment on
Goes to
that.
And
the-
when can we have some answers?
Well, the good point is, we expect this to be wrapped up relatively
I wouldn't
soon.
even offer that much.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so the residents have absolutely no say in what's going on
We
in
are
this
a
town.
republic.
Go ahead, Councilman, you want the floor?
Have faith.
No, I don't think anyone should say anything, but I think I
Yeah.
wanted clear that the residents have
met in
absolutely
Trenton,
no
what
say in
You
what's
have the
going
say in
on.
the vote of your elected representatives at certain times. that
That's
they have
kinda
to-
scary
they have to have- Well,
sometimes.
you have to have faith the process
No,
works.
I think,
that's
Well,
the
as I
republic.
said, I will have
I think,
faith.
I
can't
think
really
the
tell you anything.
discussion,
I will have faith that the process works if the master plan is adhered to, and if this MOU, which I've opposed from the beginning, has in fact, or will in fact, be there to impact positively on both the town and the residents. Thank you.
Yeah, I was told I
Be
can't
careful.
comment. I would like to. The
careful.
mayor's
But
absolutely
I certainly
correct.
wish someone would
We
comment.
had a couple
and
things go
say-
bad on us.
Yeah, but we were told we really couldn't
Mrs.
comment, so. The
the
mayor,
speaker is requesting something that you can't do as a matter of rule or law. Simple as that. Whether you want to or not, whether we agree with the rules, that's the
We've
rules
been
with
burned on it
COA.
recently as a town several times for speaking when we shouldn't
I mean,
have.
I'm bound to tell you what the law is, and you're bound to adhere to it, and that's the law, from my understanding, is that it's a confidential process.
Thank you, Mr. Gannon. Mr. Curry, welcome, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, I'll pass.
Okay, Mr. Curry, thank you. Mr. Tintillo, welcome. Hello, Mr. Tintillo, welcome. How can we help you tonight?
Vinny Tantillo, Casino Drive, Mayor, Council. Just 2 things. I just want to know about the reevaluation people. Is there any kind of a plan? Do they have sections they're supposed to go to? Because the reason I'm asking, they came on Casino Drive last week, done one house, left that house, went down Luxury Lane, done one house down there, left that one. Came back this week to the house they did on Casino Drive because they forgot to measure the garage. There's one guy that comes around, I don't know their names. He refuses to give you a card or anything. Won't tell you his name or nothing. He's short, he's fat, he stinks. Not you, Bob. And I think it's appalling, really. I mean, when is it going to get done? How long is this going to go on?
Mr. Filiatro or Mr. Czerniecki, either one. I'll start with you, Mr. Czerniecki. Go ahead, sir.
We're approximately, well, we're more than 60% of the way through, and we're on schedule to finish in the October timeframe. But Mr. Tentillo, really, if the employees aren't doing their job well, you should know that other residents have called me, and I will be more than happy to follow up with the company.
Can we find out from the company who the person is that has done any work on casino? Then we can zero into this individual.
I mean, I don't
and
care. They
register
can
our
miss me if
complaints.
they want. That's okay.
Hey, Tom, you just said something that might be scary to some residents, too. You said we were on schedule to be completed through October, but I think people should know that doesn't mean that
Right,
rates go up in
sorry.
November. So that's just the
Inspections.
first part of the process, the reval, I mean, the looking in the house.
The other
Check
thing
in, Mr. Till. Thank you.
was I thought I got to commend you. That was a real nice thing, giving the awards tonight to all these people. I just wish those 70, 75 people are in here now. I applaud them. I applaud you for what you did. However, there's somebody you forgot. And that person spent money when Katrina hit. It was cold. There was children that had no clothes. And this person went and spent a lot of money and sent a trailer load of clothes and coats down there. And that person was Mr. Walsh. And I like to applaud him myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Till. I think had we known that, Mr. Walsh, we would have had you up there with a certificate.
And tell you, Mayor,
I didn't think so.
I don't know if we were talking that week.
I'm not sure we're talking this week. All right, that's it on individuals in the public. Mr. Czerniecki, we're going to turn over to you. I think you want to talk about the North Howell Little League, and then you want to do design standards. Is that right?
Yes.
Go right ahead, sir.
First, Council, as you know, the council was approached in the spring with a request for approximately $230,000 in additional funding to complete the North Howell Little League concession stand and meeting facility. This was in addition to $150,000 that was agreed to last year. Understandably, there were many questions and concerns regarding this project, and council directed staff to review the matter and return to council with recommendations for moving forward. Mayor, we have spent the past few weeks reviewing this matter, and after consulting with the town attorney, the Township Bond Council, we have some suggestions to move forward and to secure the structure. And I would like to read to you approximately 7 points dealing with how we ought to proceed. Before I do that, though, I would like to thank Mr. Dungy. He's the Director of League Operations for North Howell Little League, for the information he's provided. Mr. Dungy has been a gentleman to work with, and the children of North Howell Little League are truly fortunate to have him working on their behalf. Okay, these are staff's recommendations, Mayor. Number one, the Township Manager and staff will return to the Planning Board with the revised plan for a capital project review that reflects current conditions and current elevations. Number two, the township should honor its agreement with the North Howell Little League and pay the $150,000 for the building once a CO is issued and an appraisal of value is established equal to or in excess of said amount. It should be made very clear that the township will own this building and regulate it accordingly. The North Howell Little League should be permitted to complete those phases of the project that are currently in progress. This includes installation of the roof, windows, and doors. This shall be done under the township supervision, and provided that it falls within the $150,000 originally agreed to in the agreement. The township, through its consulting engineer and building and grounds department, has determined that approximately $140,000 is needed to make the facility basically operational. This does not include central air conditioning, the advanced electrical work. It does not include the construction of staircases to the second floor, nor does it include finishing the second floor. But we believe these funds are needed to make the facility operational. The council is asked to approve a separate capital ordinance providing for these funds. It is recommended that the lease agreement with North Howell Little League be amended. We currently have a lease for the land. It is recommended that there be a lease for facilities, and the lease shall call for an annual contribution of $6,500 a year until the year 2030. The township, through a general contractor that we hired, or the Department of Public Works, Division of Buildings and Grounds, will undertake completion of the project utilizing the $140,000 now being requested. The township will determine the most cost-effective approach. The township's focus, again, will be on completing the ground floor and getting a CO. The top floor will not be completed, nor will the staircase. Utilizing its own funds, with the permission of the township, North Howell Little League, like other leagues, is permitted to undertake its own ongoing improvements to the facility. Any improvements must comply with all applicable construction and ADA accessibility requirements for public facilities. So, Mayor, these are the recommended approach. I had visited the facility on numerous times. I think it's critical we move forward and secure it from the elements. And again, this was developed in consultation with the township attorney and the bond counsel who was involved in the original agreement.
All right, so I'm going to open up to questions from the council. I mean, this is the first we're all hearing this in detail, so I'm not, so you want to let this sink in? What's the pleasure of...
Well, I'll speak as one would normally speak. It sounds like, first of all, that the kids will be taken care of. It is going to be a finished structure at some point now, it sounds like, which was somewhat in doubt a couple weeks ago. We are, I guess, based on what you're saying, laying out the funds in advance, which is enabling this to be completed. But it does sound like there's some obligations from the league back to the town. So, that washes, I guess, too. So I'm happy for the kids anyway that they'll have a structure.
It's important to understand that it is our facility.
Mm-hmm.
For better or worse, like it or not, it is ours, and therefore it needs to be secured.
The question that I have is this 140 is, so I get it straight, are you saying this is in addition to the 150?
That's correct.
And then I guess you're coming up with the $6,500 a year is to pay back. I don't. How does the $6,500 fit into this?
So,
go ahead. I mean, whatever.
It can't be a payback.
Okay.
It will be a rent for the building.
Okay.
The town cannot put its full faith and credit on behalf of a tax exempt organization. It is not connected in any way. It is a rental. It just.
So like we have other lease arrangements with the other leagues for various facilities, this will be a lease arrangement on this facility. Okay.
This is probably the only one with money involved, right? I mean, are there
Beyond
any
the
other?
dollar.
Are there any other sports
Currently
organizations where the lease involves payment?
I believe the other
I don't
leases
know.
call for $1.
$1.
How is that going to work? That all the other leagues pay $1 and this league pays $6,500 to lease its field? How's that going to work? In all honesty.
Well, in theory, the facility will, the concession stands allow the league to generate revenues. And in my conversations with North Howell Little League, it was an offer that they put on the table and an offer they put on the table when they testified.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds fair.
Do you have any questions, Mrs. Showmaker?
No, I think I asked most of them to Mr. Shinicki.
So what's the,
I think the game plan here is to secure the building, to get it finished, and to move forward.
so we're past the Little League season, obviously. Is it the milestone to get it done before next April, or is it
Well,
a 2-year thing? What are we
know,
talking about the timeline?
I don't think it never ends. I don't think sports ever end anymore, believe me. As the father of a child that plays sports, I'll be in Ohio this week, okay?
I
Well,
think,
for this league, though,
just
what's
to-
what's
just
the
to be-
timeline?
What's the
Well,
timeline?
just to be, completely upfront, we are going to be putting this more than likely under the direction of Public Works Division of Building and Grounds. They are currently, undertaking numerous other projects and did not anticipate this one.
Where's that new director?
So,
Yeah, where'd he go?
Right.
Where's that new director?
so we'll do the best we can. It is really my sincerest hope that we can get a CO at some point next year.
Was Mr. Dunshee and Mr. Akuli in on these negotiations for what to do?
I contacted Mr. Dungy and I advised him of what my recommendations were going to be this evening.
Can we speak with them?
Yeah, well, I had said we're going to hold some space in the event that Mr. Dungy had any questions or comments. Has, not to steal his thunder, but by and large, what was the league's reception to this set of conditions?
I dealt with Mr. Dungy, and I think I'll
Why
let
don't you
him
have him
speak
come
for
up?
All right,
himself.
Mr. Dungy, why don't you come on up?
I want to hear from
Hello, Kevin.
Nice to see you, Mr. Dungy.
Gentlemen, ladies, how are you?
Did you bring the thunder?
There's no thunder tonight, guys.
Yeah, well,
If you wouldn't mind, just for the official record, if you'd introduce yourself again. Mr.
Kevin
Dungy.
Dungy, excuse me, Spicy Pond Road here in Howell. Couple thank yous. First of all, when we originally came before the council looking for help and guidance, it was in good faith with, look, this is what we run into here, what do we do? We were asked for the amount that we thought it could be in worst case scenario was 230, and then it was suggested that 260 just to be safe. So really that's the number, and a bunch of numbers have been tossed around by the public in terms of this, but really this was a cost to completion, worst case scenario, no donations, no labor, no material. What's it the worst situation that's going to cost? And then we really look for some help. And certainly, Little League's position was, we're not looking at big screen TVs here. We're not looking at leather recliners. We're trying to get the thing operational. So one of the suggestions, which I think was a good one, was, hey, we've got this HVAC unit and this heating unit. It'd be great to get that right now, but we can get the CO without it. Now, as you recall, the state required, we had a bid for $24,000. The state requirement for that unit is $75,000. So that's a big chunk out. The electric and some other things. The bottom line here, I think, is that the township and the league are working together to create what we talked about a long time ago, something that's lasting, something that's a legacy both for this council and for the group who's working with at the board of directors now, something that's going to outlive all of your time on the council and probably most of our lifetimes. And we're doing so where this building ultimately is still going to cost the township of Howell and the taxpayers $150,000. Certainly it's going to be a building that's worth significantly more than that. And Little League, as I've said publicly in the newspaper, is more than willing to do their share to step up and help with this. And so ultimately, again, it costs the township $150, and you're going to have a great building there. We will continue to work. You have my word. We will continue to work to get the upstairs open, so that'll be even a nicer facility. And we already
Do you have any
people lined
questions
up
or
for that.
concerns, Mr. Dungy, about the architecture of this arrangement as proposed?
I think with my conversations with Mr. Slagle, that 140, even as we did with the 260, is kind of a worst-case scenario. Would that be right? I mean, I think we can get the building operational for significantly less than that.
Let me interject right there. We talked about something, you and I, actually some of us, about another thing they may not know about. Can we talk about that?
So, I'm sorry, say it again?
I don't think he knows about it.
The second floor.
This,
nobody
the
talked to
ADA
me.
compliance stuff.
That's really dependent on the particular use identified for the second floor. But
We're
that-
hearing you may have to have an elevator in that building, which adds monies.
If it's not used for storage, we have some questions that we asked the architect to respond to. We haven't received a response yet.
So worst case may not be completely known yet, but things are moving in the right direction, it sounds like, anyway.
We originally had a letter from the architect that said that it might be required. My understanding was you had a waiver because of the way that it was structured, and that it was a building that was being used for Little League purposes. I don't know the particulars on that, but certainly we're willing to work with the town, whatever.
He's the expert. Well, it's his
So you're
license.
looking at that as a sidebar.
We'll look to him for a definitive response.
Do you have any other questions, comments, observations on this proposal, Mr. Dungy?
No, I want to, again, I want to thank the council. I think all of you, a few years ago, when originally this $150,000 was designated for this project, had kind of the same vision that we did to get something up there. I know we've spoken about it before, to get something up there for the kids. And we're ready to go with the roof. We're ready to go with the windows. Windows are donated. Roof, we're getting at a tremendous discount. We'll finally get to the point we're at that 150, and once we're there, presumably we can't do any more. And I think the township will pick the ball up from that point on, and we want to thank everyone, particularly Mr. Trunetsky, who is really a gentleman and a tribute to the town, and couldn't have been better and helpful to work with, and also Mr. Schlegel as well. So they did the council proud and the township proud. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to say something also. Mr. Dungy had invited anybody from the town on numerous occasions to go to the board meetings on Monday night. And last Monday night, I went, and upon going there, was handed 3 years of financials. I asked numerous questions about the financials, the project, and I saw nothing, and I am qualified to read financials. I saw nothing that alarmed me at all. The financials seemed in perfect order. The questions I had were explained in very short, concise answers, very understandable. For anybody to question the financials, to me, would be absurd. I would stand there and defend them at any time. And I want it to be said after looking at them, I'd really like that to be stopped. We are one town. And this will benefit all the children of Howell. It doesn't really make a difference that it's in one section. I know I've had my children play down at Deerwood Park at times. I've had them play at Howell Central. I mean, it'll be a credit to the township, and the financials should not be questioned at all. I would like that to be stopped.
Thank you, Councilman.
The only other comment I want to add, and I've kind of reserved commenting on this, but I'm going to do it now because I think we're pretty close to bringing this up, is I do coach in that league. My 6-year-old plays baseball there. He was 3 years old at the time this project was determined to take shape. And I have been disappointed that there have been some, and I'm not saying anyone on this dais, in fact, I don't think people on the dais have, but several have attempted to make this a divisive issue and suggested that this league is getting some sort of a preferential treatment because I privately coach my son there. My wife and I were very upset because this issue was forced to enter our home, and I have to tell you, it really upset me, probably more than any other particular issue that has, because what I do with my family is my business, and what I do in particular with my kids is my business. And I can absolutely separate my responsibilities as mayor from my responsibilities as a dad. Now, the dad part comes first, and if anyone has an issue with that, they can recall me over it. But the fact of the matter is that at no time has my engagement as coaching my son's Pee Wee baseball team engaged into this issue. And to those that have tried to create the divisiveness that Councilman Walsh talks about, shame on you, because this is not a political issue. And I have a pretty thick skin, and so does my wife. But this one hurt. This one bothered our family, and I don't really appreciate it. So I just wanted to get that off my chest and on a record. I'm going to continue to coach for as long as my son wants to play ball, because there isn't a single thing on this earth I got more satisfaction of than coaching my son's baseball team. And I'd give up this job in a minute if I had to continue to coach his team. Some people may like that. But I'm going to continue to coach. And at no time did anyone from the league ever ask me about this particular topic when I was out there. In most cases, I was covered up pretty well in my hat and my coat. I didn't want people to know that I was the mayor when I was out there because I didn't want to interfere with me being on the field with my boy. So for anyone, or if anyone has any issues with that, they can take it up with me privately as a husband and a father first. And I'm hoping that whatever the outcome on this issue is that it is over and done with, and that it not be characterized for political purposes, because all that is going to do is send the wrong message to the boys and girls who play baseball there, and it's boys and girls, and it's a terrific organization. And on that, if the council is so disposed, we can take informal action tonight. Is that correct? You want some sort of an informal direction?
Okay, council's endorsement of the approach would be appreciated.
All right, well, what I would recommend then is I would ask someone to, well, we probably need to go into public session to do this. Is that right, Mr. Davis?
Yeah, that's correct, sir. And we also have 3 resolutions related to the Farmland Preservation Program
All right,
tacked on.
well, we'll go into public now, and then we'll get to the other ones later. So I'd like a motion to please go into public session.
So moved, Mayor.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any remarks on going into public? Hearing none, roll call on going into public, please.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Tabasco?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBell?
Yes.
All yes.
I'd ask that a member of the council, if they so choose, to please offer a motion in conjunction with what was recommended.
Mayor, I move that we follow the advice of our township manager and go along the lines that he pointed out as to how to handle the North Howell Little League situation.
So moved, Mayor.
We have a motion, we have a second. Are there any additional remarks? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Tabasco?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBell?
Yes.
All yes, Mayor.
All right, Mr. Dunshee, I'm sure your office will work on the final arrangements with Mr. Chernetsky, and let's get this building open.
I appreciate it. Thank you all very much.
Thank you for all your time. Appreciate it. Okay. Mr. Chernetsky, are we up to design standards?
Yes, it'll take me a minute or two to get set up, so
All right, why don't we take a 5-minute recess?
Business resolutions?
We're going to come back and we'll do.
Okay.
Do you want to do the resolutions? Hold on.
That-
All right.
You went
let's-
into open session.
We're in
so
open session. I'd ask a member of the council
You
to
can do them collectively.
please make a motion to singularly introduce the add-on resolutions for action tonight.
We can do them collectively, sir.
You have to do them each individually?
No, collectively.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Like consent.
Correct.
Yeah.
I'd like someone to introduce a motion.
All right, let me just tell you what they are very quickly.
Go ahead. We've got 'em.
One pertains to to redesignate certain properties for the PIG Planning Incentive Grant Program for 2005. Another one is to do with the preservation of the Okerson Farm, 34-plus acres. And the third one is Tulo Farm, located also in Howell, which is 142 acres.
Mr. Costigan, would you mind standing up a minute? Everyone give this man a round of applause. Our farmland preservation. We know they're not done yet, but thank you. All right, so I'd ask that someone please make a motion to move all 3 of them.
Add them to the agenda and then vote on them.
Okay, add to the agenda first, please.
So moved, Mayor.
Motion to
And
add.
second.
Second to add. Any remarks? Hearing none, roll call on the add-on.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Tabasco?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBell?
Yes.
Now, go ahead.
Motion, please, to introduce
Motion.
resolutions.
So moved, Mayor.
Motion, we need a second.
And a second.
Are there any remarks? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Tabasco?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBell?
Yes.
Okay,
All right, we're
that's
going to
it.
take a 2-minute recess until the
Could you,
equipment is fired up.
Before you,
I'm going to reconvene the meeting back to order. Mr. Chernetsky, folks, if I could just ask for your attention, please. Okay, we're back in our meeting. If you need to have a sidebar conversation, we would just ask that you kindly take it out into the hallway. Mr. Chernetsky, I believe that you and Mr. Newcomb are going to present the first draft of the community design standards. We're going to turn it over to you, sir. How much time do you need, just from a time check perspective?
I think we can get through this in the next 15 minutes.
Okay, go right ahead.
Our goal is, we've provided you with the draft ordinance. There's extra copies here of the draft ordinance of the community design standards. And we're hoping to be in a position to adopt next week. And this will be the first installment on the master plan process. And I would ask our planner, Mr. Newcomb, to explain the master plan context of what's being proposed.
Okay. As the council knows, the planning board in April adopted the land use element of the master plan. And to implement the policies of the land use element, it simultaneously had developed some various recommendations to you in terms of ordinance changes. Part of the ordinance, the area that the planning board was somewhat concerned about, all right, was non-residential development and the lack of specific standards that, in essence, should be possibly adopted by the council to help, guide that sector. In talking to the manager, we decided to expand it maybe a little further in terms of residential development also, and in essence, together we've kind of put together the draft that is basically pretty much before you.
Okay. Mayor and Council, since I have my side turned towards you, feel free to interrupt as I'm going along. So first and foremost, when we reviewed the budget, we came to, I think, an understanding of how little, in terms of rateable value, the type of commercial development we've been seeing actually contributes as a percentage of our overall valuation. And I think this next image explains it quite clearly why we need to have community design standards, because quite frankly, this is permitted on Route 9. And I don't think that speaks highly for what should and ought to go next to it, nor does it, quite frankly, contribute a great deal to our property tax base, although it's a commercial property. The idea of having great community design standards means value. It means value in terms of the quality of life that our residents enjoy, where they choose to spend their discretionary income and time, and as well as the caliber of businesses that we're able to attract because of this whole theory of clustering, where businesses want to be next to similar and like businesses. And to the extent that this is what we're promoting, I think we're losing out. So we referenced a number of texts in terms of what we want to see. I think it's important to realize that these aren't zoning codes and that they're absolutely required, but it gives the council's blessing as well as the planning board's blessing to the professionals to sit down and work with developers in terms of making it real clear that we have policy guidance for what the vision is for Route 9 and what we want to see. And I think Mr. Newcomb, as a very experienced planner, and myself, in the short time I spent in planning, can testify to the fact that having that guidance, having that concrete direction from you, puts us in a great position when we can negotiate with applicants. So again, like I said, we've referenced numerous textbooks used at Rutgers and other places in the field of community design, and let me just launch it with the notion of some general principles. And the first principle is gateways. Buildings located at obvious entrances shall mark the transition in a distinct fashion using massing, contrasting materials, and heights. And where buildings aren't appropriate, other gateway objects shall be provided. What I'm doing is just giving a very brief synopsis of what the draft ordinance includes. Focal points. Where possible, we should use points of visual termination. And these should be occupied by monuments, fountains, or distinctive buildings and spaces. This here is Palmer Square in Princeton. This is the relatively new town center in Reston, Virginia, and this is Annapolis. And perhaps the greatest example of use of visual terminations is our nation's capital, where, given this diagonal organization of roads, everywhere you look, you have a real fine sense of enclosure. We would like to establish a build-to line. We talked about the previous height ordinance, which we are now in the process of amending, which gives us varied setbacks. We think it's important to have build-to lines. And Chuck, please feel free to jump in.
Yeah, this is actually also, the build-to line is actually a recommendation pretty much out of the Western Monmouth Development Plan also.
Where mixed-use development is provided, we ought to have some guidance if and for where that should occur. So again, this isn't zoning, it doesn't permit it, but it regulates it should it be proposed. So where mixed-use buildings are permitted, retail should be restricted to the ground floor. Office would be permitted on the second floor, And if residential is permitted in any way, it should be stepped back from the commercial floors to provide added buffers from street noise.
Yeah. Might mention that under the growth share ordinance, we have now the opportunity to promote mixed use because of the fact that, the highway development districts, for example, have to provide either a residential unit, affordable unit in place, or they make the in lieu payment.
Okay, building orientation. We are so accustomed to orientating our buildings along parking lots. This is an example of a mall in White Marsh that was failing. And what they did at this mall is, in the parking lot of the mall, they created a Main Street feel. And the idea is that they provided some on-street parking, and in the back of these buildings is where the parking lot is. And I think what happens when we do this is we invite people to come and spend time because the message is clear. We're building for people, we're not building for cars. Climate considerations. The codes call for porticos, porches, and arcades. Building variation and harmony. Building footprint should vary along with entrances and roof orientations. However, window dimensions, cornice lines, and base treatments should establish a unified and harmonious theme. This is an older example of that, and when Bob you interviewed me about how appropriate is this for a commercial area, does it work for a Route 9, because obviously this is an older community, the answer is yes. This is an example of a typical, something of a strip mall, and yet clearly without design standards, this one building, one business can't come in and do something that deviates from the verticality of windows and other treatments we're calling for. And this is a great example of a Route 9 type project. This is in Washington in Mercer County. This is an old liquor store. It had a flat roof, no arcades, no columns, and this is a strip mall that came in behind it. The developer, because the community had design standards, retrofitted this little liquor store, turned it into a Dunkin' Donuts, gave it gooseneck lamps, and created a unified sign band and added the dormers. So again, here's a perfect example of how we can make use of these, I guess, traditional community design standards along a highway. This is Kentlands, Maryland. Over here is a commercial, office commercial area, and then a residential area in the back. And this is sort of a typical big box development. And as you could see, design treatments, and this looks better on my computer, but some of the treatments that you're calling for are unified with the office spaces back here.
Yeah. And big developers will work with you if you have standards in place. They're more than willing to basically make modifications and accommodations.
That's a Lowe's.
That's a Lowe's.
That's a Lowe's, yep. And it's interesting because when you walk from this commercial center and this residential neighborhood, it's an uninterrupted pedestrian experience through here. And until you turn around and realize there's a big parking lot here, you don't really feel it. And I think these are some of the themes that we talked about with respect to the residential neighborhoods that surround Route 9. We want to integrate them and not separate them. To the extent possible, we'd like to push parking to the sides and to the rear of buildings.
We already have a requirement in our ordinance, which is difficult. We've had difficulty in terms of implementing, and we've had to basically give design variances, which really requires parking to not be in front of the buildings.
Okay, to the extent possible, we want to push drive-throughs to the rear or to the sides. Again, to talk about the idea that we're building for people, not necessarily cars. This is the brand new Roma Bank headquarters in Washington, and this is the view from the back, and there's the drive-through areas. which is hidden from the street. This is the gas station in Kentlands, Maryland, where the little quick shop is moved to the front and the pumps are moved to the sides and the rear, so that's not what you see from the street.
Though they are properly signed, so you can, you can identify where you're going.
You see that $3.39 a gallon, right, Chuck?
Yeah, I noticed that.
Moving from general design principles to streetscape design principles in commercial areas, the standards call for granite curbing or equivalent, and walls and fences that are compatible with the architecture of the building. Street lighting. As we indicated, we have perhaps 7 different forms of traditional street lighting along Route 9. We're recommending a simple acorn design be adopted as a township standard. And then for municipal facilities, we see this at Echo Lake, and this is also what's being planned for Bonham Park, and we think it ought to contribute to a corporate identity for the township.
There's also some height variations because actually in terms of lighting, you want to have a different height for parking lots versus what you have for walkways. So the way that we have it right now is we have a set standard for non-residential parking in terms of height, but what we really should is offer a variation in terms of the purpose for what it's used for.
Okay. Sidewalks. We'd like to see sidewalks, and we're providing standards for sidewalks along Route 9 so that they're designed in a way that's safe and promote pedestrianism. Street furniture. Again, I used the example of more of a suburban shopping area instead of a traditional downtown, where street furniture is incorporated into parking lots and other areas. The codes call for usable site furnishings for all structures larger than 10,000 square feet. Just because we're on a highway doesn't mean there isn't room appropriately designed for recreational and internal open spaces. So we encourage that to the maximum extent possible, and also encourage the location of restaurants, cafes, and outdoor dining areas within these internal open spaces, often referred to as greens, plazas, and commons. When we start getting into the idea of big box, we want to see developers make a concerted effort to make sure that the scale of buildings relate to nearby buildings as well as residential neighborhoods. And one way that we achieve that is by making sure that they break up the walls every 50 feet instead of having this one huge long wall. In terms of the architectural, the actual facade standards that I think we just often refer to as facade, here are some very basic features we're calling for, and we think you can accommodate this in either a traditional building or a contemporary building and yet provide for a unified feel. Buildings ought to have an articulated base and a cornice on all exposed sides. So this would be the base area. This is the cornice area. Facades over 50 feet in length shall have projections or recesses. And here's an example where that recess occurs. If it looks familiar, it's because it's the Barnes & Noble in town. They did a real nice job. The code requires that features such as display windows, awnings, etc., should occupy 60% of the facade. And building facades should include the following 3 changes. There should be a change in, each building should have 3 things: a change in materials, a change in colors, and a change in textures at least once in a repeating pattern. And the colors should be neutral or earth tones. For single-purpose big box buildings, again, they must have breaks in walls and a variety of roof types. Sign standards, again, we're trying to discourage the current strip sprawl sign pattern we see now along Route 9. And then where appropriate, signs ought to be designed to appeal to pedestrians and not just motorists. And Mayor, that basically wraps up what the ordinance calls for. There are many more details, but we didn't really want to bore you to death.
No, I mean, we all have in front of us copies of this, and on the, Councilman Tabasco and I, our deputy mayor and I were just observing, this is it is so overdue, and this is such an impressive presentation. I mean, I can't speak for anybody else. I'm personally thrilled. And this is exactly, as Mr. Chernetsky can vouch to the public, when he went through the process for his selection as manager, these kinds of things had a lot to do with it, and this was the vision that we wanted. So, any questions from members of the council? We want to just start, Mr. Walsh, we'll start with you, and we'll just work our way down.
No question. I'd just like to say I'm very impressed to see Mr. Nuke and Mr. Nitsky working together to come up to something to help beautify and do the right thing for our community over the long haul. I mean, I think that's what we're here for. It's not just about today, it's about the future. And I'm very impressed by this. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I understand all about planning, designs.
No, you've done a pretty good job lately.
Well, you know what? Thank you, Mr. Newcomb. I don't know what that was. But, you know, I lean on the professionals here, and I like what I'm seeing. I like the direction it's going, and, of course, I'd like to see more. I'd like to see it in action in this township. So I'm very thankful for you taking the time and working together towards the betterment for Howell Township.
Mr. Chairman, do you have any questions or comments on this?
No, just a comment in general. First of all, I want to applaud both of you for working together. This is something that I think Mr. Chernetsky knows that I have wanted to see for some time. He and I had a conversation at the very beginning. I think this is just an additional layer to help control what goes on in our community and what we want to see and how we can continue to achieve some of the rural character in many different ways. So I want to thank you both for this. I'm anxious to see it implemented and continue to move forward in this positive manner.
Deputy Mayor, do you have any comments or questions?
Yeah, besides the fact that Joe and I were admiring what you did, Tom, we were also saying, we felt like proud papas sitting back here watching you two actually work together, because when we first thought about running for office, one of the things and Cynthia will actually remember me saying this all the time, anytime we had the opportunity to consider bringing on people into the township, we always wanted to hire people better than ourselves. And so I actually appreciate Bobby's comment, because there are some things that you two obviously know much more than we know about. So, and we just sat back here smiling. It's to watch you two gentlemen work right now and having done this, and we know it makes Howell a better place to live long term, not just through our administration, but we had a 50-year vision when we ran together 4 years ago. So we know some of this stuff will actually leave a legacy for many generations to come that will be a good one. So again, I felt very proud just watching the workings going on, two people we actually brought into the town.
Thank you. A couple of questions from a rollout perspective. We'll see this next week. And then how does the planning board, the zoning board, how do they use these tools from an implementation perspective?
Somehow my presentation, this was one of the first slides, and I guess I clicked too quickly. What the ordinance calls for, first and foremost, is that any application that has a commercial component needs to include architectural and/or what we call axonometric sketches, demonstrating consistency with the design standards.
Okay.
So that's the first thing we're going to start, and it removes the fear of asking, what's this going to look like and how does it fit in?
Yeah. Presently, we only get, the only architecturals the planning board gets is elevations and, floor plans. And usually that, basically generates a discussion in terms of parking needs and things of that nature, and, whether it basically meets height requirements and things of that, like that. I'd mentioned to Tom that we actually have a developer in right now that is actually redeveloping his strip mall, his shopping center, and he's making great efforts in terms of facades. He's doing things like establishing a cornice, and a base in terms of this facade, things of that nature, which I think, I think it'll be receptive by the commercial community. I don't think it'll be, something that that they will, see as something that impedes their progress.
If I can add to the implementation a little further, this presentation is sort of a work in progress in a sense that it's going to be attached to this ordinance, and the Land Use Department will be instructed to distribute this to any commercial applicant, so they have a visual of what we mean. Well, what's an articulated corner?
Right.
Here's a picture of what we mean.
Of what it is.
Here's where cornice is.
One of the things I'd like to recommend that you two gentlemen attempt to figure out, and I'm not certain how this could get handled, we might need Mr. Gannon's input, but one of the things I've wanted us to do for a short while is convene a meeting of the planning and the zoning boards together. Sort of a special meeting to talk about the different issues and obstacles that each of those respective boards is facing, and get them to know each other in a more informal way, sort of a team-building opportunity, knowing the importance of those two boards. And one of the things I wanted to talk about as an agenda item might be stormwater management, things of that nature. But in seeing this presentation and knowing that we are in the midst of beginning to deliberate on this being passed as an ordinance, I'd like to see if we could convene a meeting of the zoning board and the planning board where you two gentlemen give them the same presentation. Because I want to make sure that people that are looking at these applications have access to the same tools that we're going to be implementing, and that we get buy-in from people that are on our boards so that they understand what the grand plan and the vision is. And I think they would be delighted to get to see this kind of a presentation, because we're going to want, obviously, their input. So we don't need to work the detail now unless the council disagrees. I think that both boards would benefit from seeing this and having a chance to sink their teeth into it, because those ladies and gentlemen are the front line when it comes to contending with these kinds of issues. So is that something you think we could, is that work outable to do?
I think actually it's quite easy. This is a land use ordinance, so it should go to the board anyway.
Yeah, it's any approving board would basically
so-
be utilizing it.
So we would invite the zoning board to that same meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we can get everybody together. Everyone agree with that?
I would love to be there and hear their input also.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we should be there as well. There's no question. I'd like it to be a big team-building event.
It actually, the zoning board, in a lot of ways, has a lot more authority in terms of, especially with the use variance, in terms of establishing these things as conditions. So
Good.
It's just one of those things.
So you guys will work on when we can do that. The only other question I have is, let's say an applicant has filed their material and they're deemed complete, but they're deemed complete and they're just not scheduled to come in front of the planning board or the zoning board until, say, 2 or 3 months from now. Will, with the passage of this happening over the next period of time, can this apply to them, or because they've already gotten their preliminaries,
Well,
how would this work?
It's not, they have to basically, to get any standing, they would have to have first of all, in terms of site plans, we're a little different. I mean, a lot of towns have minor site plans and majors and stuff like that. And in a lot of cases, we'll have applications filed where the individual is just getting a preliminary. Once he gets that preliminary approval, he has vested rights under, the ordinance that he's basically, a completed application doesn't, if he's just a completed application, he has to adhere to.
So you have to adhere to this. So
Yeah.
the fact that we're
If there's
passing
a
it now.
change in the ordinance,
Good.
between
Okay.
the time that he gets
Start doing
preliminary
that.
and he files his application, he basically gets to have
I
to
did-
deal with this.
I do feel it's important to state two things. One is that our expectations need to be realistic in the sense that we cannot absolutely always mandate this. But many times, I found, and Mr. Newcomb, you can tell me if you think it's the case, where builders actually welcome this sort of guidance. They want to know if they're going to do something. They understand that if it's compatible to what's next door, their value increases even more than if it weren't, as long as it fits in. And then also, to the extent that any sort of variances are requested, we can say, well, look, you're going against the plan for the area. Can you show us at least where you fit in terms of how you're going to fit into the community in terms of our vision? So it's a great tool, and it sort of builds on itself. If you do one building that complies, the next building is that much easier in terms of voluntarily wanting to do it.
Good.
So I just think it's important to make that known.
And I'm not a big fan of meetings, but the only other thing I might ask you two gentlemen to consider working on is see if we can present this at the next Economic Development Committee meeting and invite some additional members of the Chamber of Commerce. So Robert Theus happens to be the president of the Chamber, and he's
It's actually
on
next Monday night.
EDC. When is it?
Monday night.
Yeah, I don't know if that's possible for you, Mr. Chernetsky, or Mr. Newcomb, or both of you, or whatever, but I think this would be a great thing to get the EDC buy-in and let the Chamber of Commerce know as well, because they're always talking to prospective businesses and things about the town, and I think they'd be delighted to see us come up with this. So maybe you can talk offline with the Deputy Mayor about getting on the agenda since he's the liaison. Is there any other questions or comments on this? All right, so then we're ready to begin the introduction this coming Tuesday.
Right. Once we introduce, we can then send it to the planning board.
Good, okay.
Perfect.
Thank you.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much. Was there, Mr. Chernetsky, was there any other business we needed to contend with tonight?
One comment to ask him.
I'm sorry, go right ahead.
Well, let him answer first.
Oh, yeah, go.
No, sir.
There isn't, okay. Mr. Pasco?
Tom, I do want to bring up one thing. Over the last year, one of the most common comments I've received as feedback from people in town, this whole recycling center issue. So I wanted you to research, not that we're definitely going to do it, but for next budget season, what it would cost the town to actually have a dumping license and for people to be able to come and actually bring their materials to there, what the costs involved in that would be. Because one of the things that people misunderstand, we never had a dumping license. We had a recycling center license, and we had to shut it down for that reason first and foremost. And we did go to the curbside pickup. But I got to tell you, in walking around the town, that is one of the top issues that comes up all the time now. Now, I used to be able to bring my stuff there. I want to bring a lawn chair. I can't now. It's driving me crazy how many times I hear this as a comment. So we really should consider this possibly as a core service that we want to have as a town. And there's no real way to address that without knowing all the facts. So we need to know the costs involved, how much it is to get licensed, and what space needs we would have, and what manpower would take to occupy that site then as a dump as opposed to just a recycling center, if you follow what I'm saying.
Need some different rules to control.
Absolutely. So we need to have more information to then consider at the next budget session whether it's really something that we should have as a core service.
I certainly think it's a great idea. Okay. I need to ask the council, we have reason for a 5-minute executive session.
Again? Really?
Yeah, we do, just very, very brief on a personnel issue. I got here late tonight from work, unfortunately. It's a very brief issue I want to talk with the council about. It shouldn't take more than 5 or 6 minutes.
Do we need a motion and second going into executive again then?
Yeah, we need to go back into executive, and then we can just motion to executive with an adjournment from here, because there isn't any reason to come back. Is that right?
Well,
There's no other business.
Does Cynthia or Bobby have anything they need to talk
Okay.
about? No?
Just as a house cleaning item, our regular council meeting obviously is a week from this evening. It is a combination workshop and agenda meeting in this chamber, 6:30 executive session, 8 o'clock for the public. And if there is no other business, I'd ask Mr. Davids for you to please read the necessary statement to go into closed session.
You said this is personnel.
It is.
Whereas Title 10, Chapter 4, Section 13 of the New Jersey Revised Statutes require that the public should not be excluded from any meetings of a public body unless a resolution authorizing such exclusion is adopted at a public meeting. And whereas the Township Council of the Township of Howell has determined that such a closed meeting is required to discuss certain matters which are exempted from consideration with the public in attendance under New Jersey Revised Statutes 10:4-12, namely personnel matters. Now therefore be resolved by the Township Council of the Township of Howell that the public should be excluded from the next portion of this meeting, and the Township Council will not reconvene in public session thereafter. Be further resolved that minutes will be kept of the meeting in closed session, and the time and circumstances under which the discussion conducted in closed session can be disclosed to the public cannot be determined at this time. Need a motion and a second.
Need a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Tabasco?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes, we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor, second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you, folks.